Hey everyone, Scott Stalker here, talking to you again about another book on my 2024 reading list. And this one here is a powerful, emotional book that first came to my attention after I watched the HBO miniseries, The Pacific. This one here just really hit me emotionally and really made me think not just about the battles this individual's went through, but the future of conflict as well. And he touches on this. This book, With the Old Breed by Eugene Sledge, it recounts his harrowing experiences as a Marine rifleman fighting primarily, and he predominantly in this book focuses on two battles, Peleliu and Okinawa. These battles, as we know, are in the Pacific Theater, fought during World War II, and were just brutal battles and fights, daily living, all of the things that he deals with, from the elements, terrain, weather, individual engagements, relationships, training. Everything is touched on here to include a ferocious enemy that he fought many, many times. This book starts where it should start, which is in boot camp and his early deployments. It starts with his boot camp experience, and for those of us that have gone through that, I understand it has evolved over time, but let's just say it's not a day at the Ritz-Carlton. It's certainly challenging mentally, physically. Everything you do there has to be done faster, has to be done more efficiently. You've got to anticipate instant obedience to orders, all of the things that instill the discipline necessary for battlefield victory. And Sledge does an exceptional job of talking about that here in his book, With the Old Breed. After talking about boot camp and the camaraderie and the challenges there, he then pivots on to battle. He embarks on the island campaigns, witnessing the horrors of war firsthand. And the first one he gets after and talks about is Peleliu. During the Battle of Peleliu, Sledge describes the fierce, gruesome fighting, witnessing the deaths and enduring extreme physical and mental strain, and what that does to you. Not just the constant fighting, but the challenges of a lack of sleep, of the weather, the terrain, all of those factors, and how it makes fighting even harder, which is why, as you read this book, you need to be thinking about how we train, how we rehearse, and in the exercises we conduct, and how we make them as realistic as possible so that we're prepared for our worst day of our lives, just like Sledge talks about here. He experiences the horrors and the brutality of close quarters combat, the terror of kamikaze attacks, and the despair of seeing fellow Marines fall, and what that does to him and other Marines as well. He then moves on to the Battle of Okinawa, which is another horrific and challenging fight, and proves to him even more challenging. Sledge faces constant fear and exhaustion, struggling to maintain his sanity amidst the carnage. He spends a lot of time reflecting on the dehumanization of war, questioning its purpose, and grappling with the loss of innocence. And if you've seen the miniseries, The Pacific, you know how hard Sledge fought to get into battle. His father was a doctor. He checked him for a medical condition. Initially, he couldn't get in. Later, when he was old enough, he was able to waive that medical condition and to come in. And so he fought very hard. And later in battle, especially in the battle during Okinawa, he really questions those decisions and that innocence lost. And this is something that I reflected on a lot. He spends time really praising and thinking about the old breed. Those Marines that were senior non-commissioned officers or senior officers, he predominantly touches on the senior non-commissioned officers in his book due to where he was in the ranks. But he continues to praise those individuals who led, who showed a great example, a positive example, who led by example. And he continues to follow their lead and calls them out and praises them for their leadership. They demonstrated resilience, courage, and compassion, showing the importance of unit cohesion and leadership in harsh environments. And for any leader, I think this is not just a war history book, but this is also a leadership book. And it shows you how to lead by example, how to lead instead of saying you're a leader, showing you're a leader by your example. So another great lesson learned there. The book explores various themes throughout, and I'll touch on a few here, but I would offer you that I won't be able to touch on them all. You need to read this book, which is why I put it on my 2024 reading list. It talks about the brutality and the inhumanity of war. As I've mentioned in several other videos before, I think when you go into the battle in a combat, you have a certain idea what it may be about, but quickly you realize it's far worse, it's far more challenging than you could ever have imagined. And you don't go in whining or complaining about it. You meet those realizations head on and you execute the mission and you follow your leaders and you fall back on the training you had. But you realize quickly the brutality of this, and many, to include myself, leave these battles and become become more of a greater peace advocate, understanding we gain peace through strength, but being a large peace advocate and someone who believes that war should always be the last resort. He also spends an awful lot of time talking about camaraderie and leadership throughout this book, and which is why, again, I think if you're looking for leadership books to consider, you can get the ones that talk about the 12 steps to becoming a leader, or you can read about it here in this book with the old breed. And I would offer that you're going to get more out of it here, because these are true stories. These are lessons learned in the harshest environments. And if you can take some of the lessons learned here and apply them throughout your lives, I think you're going to be much better off. He talks about the close bonds that have been forged with fellow Marines and offers solace and strength, while good leadership proves crucial for not just survival, but for morale as well. To take one more step forward, to continue on with the mission when it's pouring down, raining, when the terrain is a muddy mess, when you got rounds snapping over your head, when it makes no sense to move on. They move on, not for themselves, but for their fellow Marine, for the service member to their left and to their right, for their Navy corpsman, for their team. He talks about the loss of innocence and the mental strain. And that's really challenging and hard to get through, because I think all of us that have gone through something similar, and certainly I wasn't in Peleliu or Okinawa, but anything similar at all, you realize you're not the person you once were. What I've tried to really reflect on is that post-traumatic stress growth, and how I've grown through that, and how I can improve, and how I can share my story and then potentially help others as well. And I think Sledge does an exceptional job here, and I praise him for that. And then he moves on to questioning the purpose of war. And I think anyone who has been through this have thought through, wow, why did our elected leaders make the decision to go to war? Because ultimately it's their decision and we execute those decisions. But we start questioning, hey, they don't have any skin in the game. Why am I doing this? And I think that's normal, and it quite frankly a right to do. But we move on and we continue to execute because we swore to defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. He talks about some of his philosophical ideas and the reasons behind this, the justification for war and the sacrifice it demands. And I think he brings up valid points, especially considering when he brings those up and the stress he's inducing as he's thinking through this. In so many ways, he's taking us through a journey of his own thoughts, thinking out loud, collecting those thoughts, putting in his book, and asking us as the reader to question these things as well as we elect individuals to serve us in Congress or the president or local leadership or whatever. But the individuals that are going to make the decision to send our sons and our daughters, our brothers and our sisters into war, we need to think through a lot of these questions, and Sledge does a great job of bringing those to our attention so we can think about it the next time we go to ballot box. With the Old Breed serves as a powerful testament to the courage and resilience of the Marines. It offers a rare, raw, and unfiltered look at the realities of war, sparking reflection on its human cost and the importance of peace. And it's a theme that he touches on quite a bit in his book. It received critical acclaim for its honesty, emotional depth, and historical significance, winning multiple awards. And so not just about this book, but I thought I would dive into a little bit about Eugene Sledge, who unfortunately I never had an opportunity to meet. I would have loved to just sat and picked his brain and done nothing more than just listen to him talk about the battles he went through. But Eugene, semper fidelis, sir, he passed away in 2001. So he was born in 1923. And so he went through, my goodness, just an era where, we had the Great Depression, and then serving the Corps as a young man. He was a veteran and author, certainly known for the memoir and the book that I'm talking about today, With the Old Breed, as he talks about Peleliu and Okinawa. Just an incredible individual. Born in Mobile, Alabama, raised with a family there, a brother, mom and dad raised him, spent his childhood experiences, really what most kids back in those days did, exploring outdoors. He didn't have the iPad and the iPhone and the internet, and so he was outside exploring real life. But he also developed a love for literature. Really brilliant young man going in. Initially, he tried to become an officer. He enrolled at what we call the Marion Military Institute. However, later, shortly after Pearl Harbor, he enlisted in the Marine Corps, and all he wanted to do, I can really relate to this, is he wanted to serve his country and go to war and fight. And initially, he had some health challenges, but he was able to overcome those, and he talks about that in the book and move forward and serve as a Marine. So he was assigned to the esteemed, the historical 1st Marine Division. He fought in some of the fiercest battles ever. Talks about those specifically, again, Peleliu and Okinawa. He ended up doing this in secret journals, and so he recorded his ideas, his thoughts, his memoir in secret journals throughout the war, and that laid the foundation later for this book. And so it wasn't late that he had to completely reflect on everything as he had potentially forgotten parts. He had that journal with him, was able to record those thoughts and to create this book. As I've talked about, he has seen unimaginable horrors and witnessed the death of close comrades, and that impacts you. That impacted him. He talks about that as a writer, but I can tell you, anytime you lose a brother, a a sister, a comrade in arms, it does something to you if you're human. And that's okay. And it's something we have to understand and be mindful of and potentially get treated for as well. If you watch the miniseries The Pacific, you see the ending of that series. And it ends with Eugene Sledge walking up the hill, and then the music plays. And for those of you that have an emotional bone in your body like me, you get a little emotional watching that. But it ends with him, and it's powerful. And then it starts rolling the credits, and we see what became of him. Because towards the end there, it was questionable what was going to happen. He was sitting by the tree, and his mother was questioning him, and his father said something to the effect of, "Can't imagine what he went through. Give him some time." That really resonated with me because it is hard to imagine what he went through. But he went on to pursue a career in biology, earning a PhD, becoming a professor at the University of Montevallo. He also became a prominent voice for peace and a reminder of the human cost for war, and I praise him for that as well. Just a few more things about him I think are just really important. He initially struggled to write about his wartime experiences, but at the urging of fellow veterans, he eventually turned his journals into this book with the old breed and published it in 1981. But he was reluctant to publish this because he feared that it would glorify war and it would be misunderstood. I didn't get that perspective as a reader, as someone who went in with open eyes to get his perspective on these fights. I didn't think that it glorified war. It was just brutally honest, and he talked about everything. I think he really hit exactly his idea and his goal there by not glorifying war, but telling the truth. And later in life, as he became a peace advocate, we understand that he certainly wasn't trying to glorify anything. As I mentioned, this book received critical acclaim, won several awards, including the Ultimate Award, which is the Pulitzer Prize for Literature. This book is just an exceptional book. I put this on my 2024 reading list, not just because I'm a Marine, although there may be a little bit of bias there, I'll admit, but it is an exceptional book. And as we think about the future of conflict, as we think about what may be a fight in the Pacific, I would offer that nothing new is going to be done under the sun. We may have new technology, we may be able to make faster decisions, have the new domains of space and cyberspace. We have the challenges of the information environment, but the fighting on the ground in the maritime environment will be against the elements, will be against the weather, the enemy, and the terrain that's out there. And we will be doing things that Eugene Sledge had to endure. So if we're thinking about the future, we need to reflect back on the past, read these books, understand what they went through, and anticipate the same kind of challenges. Technology will change it a little bit, but the fighting will remain the same. And young men and young women will die on both sides. Sledge, just an exceptional individual, went on to publish another book called The China Marine. I have not read that yet. I will. And maybe as we look at my 2025 reading list, that will be on there. All right, everybody, let me know what you think about this book, about my thoughts, about my input on the book, about my 2024 reading list, about this channel. What are some other topics you think that I should be touching on as well, on personal development as we focus on continuing to improve in order to achieve our goals, our desired end state, and be just better people in life. Thank you again so much for watching my channels. I look forward to continuing to put out more content and to be there for you as you ask me to put out certain things, and I'll put out that content, answer your questions, and we'll go forward collectively. Thank you.